Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily video update for September 26, 2023. Today, on the one-year anniversary of the bombings that destroyed the North Sea pipeline, I'm issuing a very sharp warning. NATO's crazies are putting your life in danger. As I reported yesterday, we're reaching a point of no return in what has been up to now a NATO proxy war against Russia. This, under U.S. direction, with a big push from the United Kingdom, the U.S. has been acting to weaken Russia, to destroy Russia, or as Biden said in Poland, to get rid of Putin, using Ukraine's military as a battering ram. Now, the failure of the much ballyhooed counteroffensive has brought us to a turning point in the war. And this is being widely reported, that with the incredible casualty figures of the Ukrainian armed forces, the Ukraine army cannot win the war. Yet NATO keeps pouring arms and money into Ukraine with the vain hope that this will defeat the Russian army. But we've seen reports in the last days from Seymour Hersh and a number of others with qualified military and security intelligence sources who have confirmed that Ukraine cannot win. So a sane response would be that at this point, now is the time to enter into negotiations, into diplomacy, to see if it's possible to gain the kind of agreement that was reached back in March and April 2022, which was scuttled under U.S. orders by sending discredited Boris Johnson to Ukraine to tell Zelensky not to surrender. Well, don't expect signs of sanity from Western leaders, from Washington, London, or Brussels. Noted Russia expert Gilbert Doctorow has written that instead they are proceeding with what he calls Plan B, which might be called the Crimean Missile Crisis, as I reported in the update yesterday. The idea that by striking repeatedly at Crimea, it would become clear to Putin that he would either have to escalate to nuclear war or leave Ukraine altogether. In other words, a nuclear chicken game over Crimea for the sake of defeating Russia there. Now, last weekend, there were 2 missile strikes on Sevastopol in Crimea, targeting the Black Sea Fleet of Russia. There are unconfirmed reports that top Russian officials were killed, including the head of the Black Sea Russian naval fleet. Unconfirmed reports, but these are coming out fairly widely. Secondly, unconfirmed reports that Biden has now agreed to provide ATACMS missiles, which have long-range capability to reach into Russia, and that if that's true, that the Germans will probably make their Taurus cruise missiles available, which have even longer range targeting capabilities into Russia. And there's a third unconfirmed report that following the destruction of a Leopard tank, that is one of the German tanks in Ukraine, there were German soldiers found dead inside the tank. In other words, German military forces deployed in the Ukrainian counteroffensive. Now, these reports are all unconfirmed, and as of now, we can't say for certain if they're true. But if true, they represent a dangerous escalation, which means that it's gone from being a proxy war to NATO being a direct part of the war against Russia. So we've reached the moment where there are only 2 options: dialogue and diplomatic solution, or escalation to World War III, with the likelihood that this could lead to nuclear holocaust. Now, in this context, there's a very important document that's been produced by 4 German officials, or former officials, a clarion call for a negotiated settlement with a comprehensive peace proposal. The authors were the former top German general in NATO, General Harald Kuyat, former top advisor to Chancellor Helmut Kohl, Dr. Horst Teltschik, the son of the former German Chancellor Willy Brandt, Dr. Peter Brandt, and Professor Hayo Funke. Now, what they wrote about is the importance for Europe of securing peace through an immediate ceasefire and negotiations. Now, they urge that this be done through the United Nations. And I know many of you are going to say, oh, the UN's discredited, the UN can't do it. But what other body is there which has the heads of state and the authority to demand a ceasefire? Now, interestingly, the UN is increasingly dominated by those who are supporting Russia, or at least unwilling to support the West in this war. And so there's an opportunity for this to happen. Now, there was a report on this call from these four prominent Germans, a report in the Berliner Zeitung on September 19th by Michael von der Schulenburg, who's a former United Nations official. And what von Schulenburg wrote is, quote, NATO could be faced with the decision in the next few months, or perhaps in the next few weeks, either to escalate the war with Russia or to take the path of negotiations, unquote. Now, we will be publishing this as soon as we make sure the copyright is clear, but this call has to be circulated, and it should be circulated in conjunction with Helga Zepp-LaRouche's call to the heads of state of the United Nations General Assembly, which will be linked at the bottom of the description page. Because there has to be a growing movement of citizens reacting against the insanity of the Bidens and the Sunaks and the Macrons and the Stoltenbergs and the von der Leyens and the warhawks who control most of Western institutions. Now, in the background, one can see the cracks starting to appear in Europe, in NATO. Most prominently, one of the leading supporters of this war in the beginning, Poland, has now announced they will provide no more weapons to Ukraine. The part of the reason for this is the fact that the Ukrainians continue to dump cheap grain in Poland, which is seriously damaging the prosperity of Polish farmers. But it's also the effects of large-scale Ukrainian migration into Poland. And then there was the fairly incredible story of what happened in the Canadian Parliament a couple of days ago, where a standing ovation was delivered for someone who was proclaimed to be a hero of the Ukrainian fight against Russia. But it turns out that in reality, he was a veteran of the Galician SS, which was the Hitler-directed movement in Ukraine responsible for the massacre of Poles, Jews, and others. And in the audience at the time were Zelensky and the pathetic Prime Minister of Canada, Trudeau, leading the cheering for a Nazi official, a Nazi soldier. Now, this has led to blowback in Poland because this man's unit was responsible for the murder of anywhere from 500 to 1,000 Poles. And the Polish government has called in the Canadian ambassador to ask for an explanation. Well, here's the explanation. Putin was right when he said the denazification of Ukraine is an urgent priority for all the world. Here we have an example of idiotic, moronic Canadian parliamentarians in the presence of Zelensky and Trudeau cheering a Nazi. Now, that should tell you something about the state of the world. So the question then is the U.S. prepared to go to nuclear war to defend a corrupt regime with Nazis in the defense and security forces? And are you willing to die due to your silent submission to the war hawks and the neocons funded by the corporate cartels? Are you prepared to die to defend them? And if you're silent, your silence is giving them the leeway to move ahead. So if you're not, then you need to join our movement. We're pulling together networks internationally into an international peace coalition to build an opposition that's not merely an opposition to war, but committed to establishing a new security architecture and a new development architecture, which has the support of very significant international institutions such as the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, countries in the Middle East and Southwest Asia, many governments of Africa. We're seeing these governments standing up firmly now. We just saw Macron forced to leave Niger with his tail between his legs. Well, perhaps the same coalition can force NATO to leave Ukraine. I don't care if they put their tail behind their legs, but they should get the hell out. And it's only going to happen if you join us. I'm going to include in the description section today Helga Zepp-LaRouche's call to the UN General Assembly heads of state to act to put an end to this insanity. I urge you to join us before it's too late. Hello, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Support our independence to produce videos like these. Become a member of the LaRouche organization at thelarouche.org/member. By becoming a member for $25 or more, you'll get special access to the EIR Alert Daily Briefing and Weekly Magazine, which is what I read to stay on top of things.